when I was 5 years old, I really wanted to be a singer, but I decided it was not possible, that you couldn't do your art as your career. So when I was in my early 20s doing a transformative program, I realized that was not the truth.
It was a story that you were creating.
Yeah, it was like a belief at that point. It wasn't even a story, it was deeper. If you believe that you can't do your art as your career, you're not gonna try and do your art as your career. You're gonna get a job and do other things, which I did. I was a producer, so I was working as a producer, but being a singer seemed impossible. So I'm in this workshop and I realize it's not the truth. I realize it's a belief that got generated when I was 5. And it loosened its grip on me, and within 3 months, I got a record deal.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Corner. My name is Serena Demento. I'm the executive producer and creative director here at Four Bank Corners. Today, I have the honor and privilege of having Josselyne Herman-Saccio join us today from Paris, but originally from New York. That's where we met. Josselyne has over 30 years of experience coaching over 200,000 people and is a master at creating curriculums designed to help people live the life of their dreams. And she has come up with this concept of being unmessable with. And today we're going to explore and dive deeper into that. Another fun fact is that she was a #1 pop star. We're also going to talk about that because today we're going to be exploring what it means to live your dream life. So today we're really excited to dive deeper into that. This is a creative conversation for everyone, whether you're in the advertising or production world. This is applicable for life. So thank you for taking the time today. And thank you, Josselyne, for being with us here in Amsterdam.
Thank you for having me.
So just to give a little bit of context to the viewers, 8 years ago, my husband Richard and I, we took a course together, and Josselyne was the facilitator of that. She is a transformational coach and really all about going after your dreams, living your dreams, and what that looks like. And we took this course together and it changed our life. We started living from a place of creation, from a place of intentionality, and we went through the course and just had a clean slate from it. So great to have you here. And I'd love for the audience to hear a bit about your story.
I started participating in transformation when I was 11, which is 46 years ago. So I kind of grew up in that kind of language, transformative language. And I originally, obviously, I'm 11 years old. I'm not like Googling transformation. We didn't even have Google back then. But my parents participated in a transformative program. So they gave me the opportunity to do the children's version. And it altered everything. It was like, things became possible. My view of life, my view of the people in my life altered. And it made a huge difference in my parents' marriage because they were getting divorced.
Wow.
And then my mother participated in a program, and a year later my dad did, and they got back together. And they just celebrated 65 years together. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So transformation is just kind of the water I swim in. And then, when I was 5 years old, I really wanted to be a singer, but I decided it was not possible, that you couldn't do your art as your career. So when I was in my early 20s doing a transformative program, I realized that was not the truth, that you can't do your art as your career.
That it was a story that you were creating.
Yeah, it was like a belief at that point. It wasn't even a story, it was deeper. It was like I believed that was true, and I would, when you believe something's true, it becomes a lens to look at life through. So if you believe you're not good enough, you look at life, you look at yourself through that lens and you find evidence for that story. Same thing for anything. So if you believe, the production industry is difficult, you're probably not going to go running towards trying to work in the production industry. Or if you believe that you can't do your art as your career, you're not going to try and do your art as your career. You're going to get a job and do other things, which I did. I was a producer. So I was working as a producer, which was, very easy to me. But being a singer seemed impossible. So I'm in this workshop and I realize it's not the truth. I realize it's a belief that got generated when I was 5.
Wow.
So in that moment, when you see something as a belief and not the truth, it loosens its grip. It stops being so solid. And it loosened its grip on me. And within 3 months, I got a record deal.
I know, incredible.
Insane. And it's not like woo-woo. It was, I took actions because now it occurred as possible. So I was doing a demo and scheduling shows and introducing myself to people as a singer, whereas before that, I would never.
You didn't identify as a singer.
No way, because if you were a singer, you're a loser and an out-of-work artist, and I was not interested in being that. So it altered everything. And when that happened, I said, okay, well, if I could do this, anybody could do this. They just have to uncover whatever the limiting beliefs are or whatever the barriers are, right? So that's when I became sort of on a mission to empower people to live the life of their dreams and be what I call unmessable with, which doesn't mean being tough. It's about being able to stay in that space of vision and dreams and act from there versus getting stopped by reasons or beliefs or considerations or really reactions, that stop you.
Definitely. And do you think for those listening in, is it easy to find these blind spots yourself, or do you think you need to work with somebody?
I have never, I shouldn't say never. I cannot recall a time where I was able to see a blind spot on my own. I've had coaches, since I was a teenager, and I find coaching to be incredibly powerful. And I have 3 coaches now, and I'm a master coach, and I work with people. That's my job. But I can't see what I can't see. Yeah. And no one can. And we all have limiting beliefs and things that we've turned into reality that aren't reality, that are lids on what's possible in our life. So I find a coach is the most expedient way of somebody being able to see what you can't see and say what you don't want to hear sometimes so that you can be who you want to be.
So you had a lot of tough teachers in your life.
I still do. Yes, I do.
I'm just so curious what that dynamic is, and is it easy to hear things that are hard to hear? I mean, not really, right?
I don't
depends
know.
on how it's received.
It depends on what you're committed to. So it depends on what game you're playing in life. If you're in a game to up-level your performance, you want to hear things that are in your way because you want to level up. You want to elevate. If you're in a game called, it's more important to be safe than be at risk, then you probably aren't going to be so enthusiastic about feedback. I mean, there are people, it's interesting because I work with a lot of people that are big on social media and they get messable with. One of the things that messes with them is feedback on social media when somebody does a negative comment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's like, okay, but you're on social media. Like you're
open.
Like, you're inviting feedback.
Right.
That's what, so if you don't have a powerful relationship to feedback, it can mess with you. So, they have to reframe feedback from being like personal criticism to being people expressing themselves. They're just, it doesn't have to be like a thing.
And not attach a meaning to it.
Exactly.
And that's the hardest thing, right? Because as from the course that I remember that we took is we're meaning making machines, right? That's what we do. We do it subconsciously. We add meaning to things, and for better, for worse, that ultimately
Good, bad,
then create our reality. So today we're talking about dreams, right? And just the fact that you were able in 3 months get to
crazy,
the top of the Billboard. Is that right?
No, 3 months I got the record deal.
You got the record deal.
And then we recorded the record and we had a few failures with that. We released it in the UK because it was Stock Aitken and Waterman, the producers who did like Rick Astley and Bananarama and Kylie Minogue. They produced us and we failed in the UK. And then somebody in Denver, Colorado, like a DJ, got our song on import and started playing it. And within like 5 weeks, we went #1 in Denver. And all of a sudden, we didn't even have the album finished. Like they were going to drop us, actually.
Wow.
The record company was like, nah, forget it. We had released 2 singles in the UK. Nothing. They had a big backlash against Stock Aitken and Waterman at that time. That was like the time of Milli Vanilli. Yes, for those of you that are old enough to remember Milli Vanilli, they had to get back their Grammy because they were lip syncing. And when we would perform, would lip sync. So there was like, it wasn't a good time for lip syncing performers at that time. So, and Stock Aitken and Waterman sort of had a bad rep for that. So they were about to drop us. And then we went #1. And all of a sudden, every radio station in the country, in the US, picked us up. And we're literally, we have like climbing the charts and don't have a record in the stores.
That's insane.
So
what was the name of the band again?
Boy Crazy with a K.
Boy Crazy with a K. And it's still on YouTube. So
YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, the whole thing. It's crazy. The whole album. We now have an album because then we went back, finished the album, but it was like we missed the wave of being able to sell the record while the record was #1. But
well, still, I mean, what a big achievement from the thoughts that you were living in to then the reality that you had created.
Totally. And we were the next number one after Whitney Houston was number one for like 13 weeks with I Will Always Love You.
Wow.
So we knocked Whitney Houston off the top of the charts. That's my claim. The one-hit wonder.
That's incredible.
But better than no hit, no wonder.
Yeah. I mean, you made it a reality, and it's huge. So you went from that to then transformative coaching. What was the...
I was doing transformative coaching at the same time. Yeah. So I had started leading seminars for the company that you did programs with when I was 19 years old. So I was the youngest seminar leader they had ever had, and I was leading transformative seminars. Yeah. Then in my 20s, I started to design curriculum, and I had a nonprofit, and I worked with not so much individual personal transformation, but more systemic transformation. So I collaborated with the UN and UNICEF and different nonprofits from around the world to empower them to design systems that cause sustainable transformation. So yeah, that was, and I was leading, courses that whole time. For 30 years, I led transformative courses for that company.
For those who might be wondering, what the heck course did they do? What was the workshop? What was the course? The course was called Landmark. Now, if you Google Landmark, there are 50% amazing reviews and maybe another 50% that are a little questionable. I found it incredible. When we first signed up, I think Rich, my husband now, he was a little bit concerned. He's like, "Oh, I think you're joining a cult. I'm gonna join," not because I'm there for self-development. I'm a self-development freak. I am all about self-improvement and just knowing what I don't know. And so when my friend invited me, it was a no-brainer for me. And that's how we met, Josselyne. And I just was like, this woman, this is who I want to be. I love the way you communicate. I love how inspiring you are.
Clearly, we got the memo. Wearing black,
look at us, right?
Yes,
And during this course, which was a weekend extensive course, my mom ended up doing it, and just our relationship, our communication just excelled through the roof. And I had no idea all the stories I had holding me back. I mean, I grew up with ADD, so there were a lot of stories around that, limiting beliefs and this and that, and I just smashed through them in a weekend.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? It's so powerful.
It's so powerful.
I send people to do Landmark all the time still. I mean, makes my job much easier. If I'm going to coach people and they don't have that background, I'm like, you know what? You're going to save a lot of money on my coaching if you just go do this weekend program.
Definitely. And I think in terms of just being able to make leaps and bounds and not have these limiting ideas and stories that really hold us back. We don't even realize the stories that we have. I certainly didn't. I don't know if I would have made the move with Rich to Europe. Yes, we're based here, but we do a lot of work in the United States, and we have a bit of flexibility. And at that time, I was working a full-time job, and I just didn't see that possibility at all. And at the end of that course, Josselyne had said, "I'm really curious where you two are going to end up." And I was like, I remember that moment. And I was like, I hope I see her again. I hope that she's in my life in some capacity. And I remember during that course, you used to talk about your dreams of moving to Paris.
Yeah.
And you've manifested that as a reality recently.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we finally pulled the trigger. But it was after the pandemic, because during the pandemic, we were talking about, I mean, I don't know how many people were talking about moving to Europe and buying a chateau or whatever. I mean, we were just kind of exploring, but not really serious about, my husband's serious about buying a chateau. I'm not living on a chateau in the middle of nowhere with sheep and
city girls.
Yeah, exactly.
Over here. The same way, same conversations that we had.
I'd go to a chateau for 2 days. Okay. That's about it. But we were talking to friends, would you want to do it with us? Blah, blah, blah. And then when the border opened, when we finally could go back to France, because we would spend a month at a time or 5 times during the year, we'd come visit. We went and we met this group of expats who had all retired early and moved to France. And we were like, really? How did you do that? And they basically told us how easy it was. And I was like, oh my God. So when I went back, I was about to take a different job at Landmark, which was more of in the executive level, less leading and more dealing with other things. And it was going to be even more hours and more commitment. And I was like, I can create my future. I don't have to keep doing this. Yeah. Even though I love it, and I thought they'd take me out on a stretcher, when I died, from a course. But it was like, if I didn't do this, what would I do? And I gave myself a little space to imagine what I would do. And for sure, moving to France was one of those things. So I gave a year's notice. and I wrapped up everything, you know, and rewrote manuals and trained people and all that kind of stuff to take over my job. And then I gave myself 3 months of nothing because people don't realize how hard it is to create on top of something. And I took the advice of my mentor, who was I was directly accountable to at Landmark. His name's Mark Spiritos, amazing guy, brilliant guy. And he said, don't answer the phone for 3 months. Just do not say yes to anything. Just allow yourself the experience of completing. Because it's 30 years, you know, it's a long time. It's really 40 something years.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll write a book, maybe I'm not. But I said, I'll write a course. That's what I do. I write curriculum. So I did I piloted a course and it was called The Foundation for Being Unmessable With, right? I figured this will be my book if I'll have the course be the book. And in one of the classrooms, I was talking to people on Zoom saying, there is no someday. It's not a real day. You can't find it in your calendar. I'm all like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and how many dreams do you have that you talk about someday you're going to do this and someday you're going to do that? And then I got off the Zoom call and I turned to Mike, my husband, and I was like, we keep talking about someday moving to France.
Right.
Are we going to do it? And he goes, yeah, let's pick a date. And we did.
Wow.
And we booked the ticket. And then we came over for a weekend just to kind of be here. And friends of ours from that group said, well, are you looking for an apartment? Because we're moving.
And everything just fell into place. Incredible.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow. So talk about living in integrity and just having it right in your face. Like, oh, hold on. I've had this dream for a while.
That was a blind spot that got illuminated out of being with people, coaching them, because you can sometimes discover things about yourself as you're coaching someone else. That I've found is very powerful. Like I'll go, I should listen to myself, do as I say, not as I, do. Yeah.
Right. So what advice would you have, Josselyne, for people who feel stuck, who feel like they're trying to achieve goals, but they're just in a rut?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, especially very effective people, right, are good at reacting to life, right? You have to be to put out fires and deal with whatever's coming at you. That's very different than the space of creation and vision. So goals and vision are very different. You can have a goal to triple your business, but why? What do you really want? Like, let's say you tripled your business, then what would be available spatially? I mean, I don't want to get too woo-woo, but like it's an experience. It's not so much a tangible result. It's like, what do you really want that you think the triple income is going to allow for? So maybe it's freedom, maybe it's impact, maybe it's, because when I would work with actors, I have an entertainment company and manage the careers of actors. And I asked them, okay, well, what do you want? What's your dream career? Oh, I want to book a TV show. Okay, let's say you book a TV show. Then what? Well, then I could do films. Okay, let's say you book the films. Then what? Well, then I could win an Academy. I'm like, okay, let's say you won the Academy Award. You can pick anything. No more money problems, blah, 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 blah. Now what is there like a present? And it's always something like peace or freedom or making a difference. Fulfillment. And, that's the space of vision. Once you can get clear about your vision, then the vehicle becomes less important. And I find most people that are stuck are focused on the vehicle, not the vision. So they're looking down and in rather than up and out. And when you're managing your business or your family or whatever it is that your job, whatever it is, you're looking down and there's no magic in management. So it takes something, and this is what I work with people on, to get them out of that space of looking down and reacting to life. Even if they're really good at reacting,
Right.
It's just a different space. And get them into the world of vision where they have more breath, where they have more space, where they can really design their life from nothing, not from an extrapolation of the past.
And so it's essentially being driven by a why, energetically, and not getting so bogged down by...
Slightly different, because it's not so much a why, it's a space. So when you're in that other world of being stuck, you're driven. When you're in the space of vision, you're given. And it's a very different experience of life. One is sort of like pulling you forward, and the other is pushing
you. Ooh, okay. So there's a different push-pull system there going on. Okay.
Because even if you say why, I mean, I said why with the thing just to put it in layman's terms, but honestly, I never say the word why, because then you're forced to give a reason or an explanation, which all lives in the world of reaction. You've never created a reason. You always describe some reason that seems like it's the truth. So you're stuck in your reasons, and you have to justify them. And then you got to come up with a whole story to explain why you have, well, because when I was 15 and blah, 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 and now you're even deeper. So when people experience being stuck, it's a lot of that stuff that's on them, and you have to pull them out of it to get them into, it's kind of like being in a fishbowl with lots of poop in the bowl, you know, like you don't, the fish don't really realize they just swim a little slower every year, you know, but if you take them out and put them in clean water, it's like whoa.
Thank you for explaining that. So then what is a question one can ask themselves to break it down even further?
Once you get your vision, then you have 100 different pathways to fulfill on that vision. But it's interesting because I'm working with this group of entrepreneurs right now in my Entrepreneur Mastery program, right? Which is a year-long program about mastering performance, creation, moving from reaction to creation, and freedom. Because most entrepreneurs, one of the biggest problems is they become imprisoned by their company. You know, all of a sudden they're working, just so many hours and they're accomplishing, but they're burnt out and they, stressed out and all that stuff. So I wanted to work on that. And one of the surprising results has been with many of them is they're no longer attached to what they're doing. It's like, it's amazing. It's like, it's not what I expected, because the holder was people want to double their income but have more freedom. And now some of them are like, I think I'm going to even close my company, or I think I'm going to sell my company, or, what's next for me is I can see a whole other pathway to fulfill on, like, whatever it is, creating courses.
Do you work with specific industries or all kinds of entrepreneurs and also people that are in corporate jobs?
I work with executives. I work with entrepreneurs, founders. I work with just regular people. I have a regular group, not regular, but I have a group coaching program that's not designed specifically for entrepreneurs or executives. And then I have a few clients that are transitioning and retiring and creating, okay, what's next? Because that's a big time when people are like, okay, I've had this career for 30, 40, 50 years. And I've accomplished amazing things, but now what? Now what is a big question?
Absolutely. And honestly, I've always been afraid of the word retirement. I really do. There's nothing remotely exciting to me about that word. I actually really identify with the Japanese culture where they don't even have that, because every single stage of life, you have a purpose and you have a reason to do something. I think it's important to live a life that is right for you at the stage in which you are, right? So right now I'm in my 30s. I own a business. There are definitely some highs and lows. It's not easy, especially in multiple countries. So there's a lot of challenges. And is it sustainable? Is it ever going to get easier? These are questions that I ask. Do I want it to be easier? Do I like it?
It's not going to get easier unless you design it that way. And that's the thing that most people don't do, because as an entrepreneur, you built it. You created it. You were bootstrapping it. You didn't even know what you were doing in the beginning. You're just creating it, and that's exhilarating. But at some point, creation then shifts over to, now I got to manage it. I got to get more business. I got to make sure my employees.
It's very practical.
And that's the looking down and in. So how do you bridge that gap from stuff does need to get managed, obviously, but that should not be you. That should not be you doing it. How you created the business was being in that space of vision and creation. So what I work with people on is shifting back over to that space so they can be freed up to do what fills their heart. That's real fulfillment, is fulfilling on a vision you created, not feeling fulfilled because you accomplished a goal. It's very different, because you've accomplished 100 goals, but it's like for 3 seconds you're satisfied. Then the next, it's like, okay, the next carrot, the next carrot, the next carrot. And people aren't fulfilled by accomplishing goals that are mostly by default, by society or by industry. It's like, well, you should want this and you should accomplish this and you should,
Also, I feel like at times in my life, I've had a lot of, I don't want to say shame, but almost fear about thinking big and envisioning something big for myself. So I was like, oh, am I allowed to have this dream? And I think it's just such a process to like work on oneself, to be able to give yourself that possibility to think and envision something. Why not?
Well, it's interesting because when I work with people on vision, a lot of times they talk about themselves like, well, I want to be doing this and I'm like, that's not vision. That's over here. Vision goes outward. So vision, that's why I say it's a spatial thing. So if your vision is freedom, it includes you, but it's not about you. It's not limited to you. So what you are fulfilling on is the possibility or the space of freedom in life for you, for your family, for people, for your staff, for your clients. I mean, like that becomes the lens, the game that you're playing. It's more important for people to experience freedom than not. You know, most people are in default games. Like it's more important to make more money than I make now than not. I mean, you didn't make up that game. That game just sort of glommed on you,
right.
You know.
It's a systemic game.
Exactly. And so if you can be the author of the games you're playing, which includes being the author of your vision, then all of a sudden you take the lid off what you could create as a goal. So like, well, what if I started a center for production companies that are by country? I'm making stuff up, but you know, like whatever it is, there's no limit.
There's no limit.
Because it's not about you.
Right.
Why people get weird about their dreams is because mostly it's about you as an individual doing something, not
the collective.
fulfilling on a space.
On a space. Beautiful. Well said. And so I'd love to dive deeper into the game of life. Is it fair to say that life is a game? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you can look at your life. You could look at anything through the distinction game, right? So if you look at a game as, first of all, a game is made up. There's no golf that somebody discovered. It was created. Somebody created tennis, right? You know, I know your husband loves tennis.
We love tennis.
You know, I'm a basketball girl myself. So a game gets created by someone saying
the rules.
No. Saying the game. What's more important than not? See, you don't have a game yet, so you can't have rules. The rules come later. So Naismith, who invented basketball, created ball through hoop is more important than not. It's not true that the ball through hoop is more important than not. It's not like inherently true. But in the game of basketball, which he had the say over because he created it, that is the game. And if you're playing basketball and for you it is not more important to get the ball through the hoop, then you're not in the right game. You should get off the court because there are people in that game that actually are playing that game, you know? So a game is created by saying something's more important than not. Now, most people don't actively create the games they're playing. They just find themselves operating like being right is more important than being happy, or being safe is more important than taking risks, or, you know, being less weight than I weigh now is more important than what I weigh now, or whatever. They just start finding themselves in those games by default. So if you can be the author of the games you're playing, you could put it to anything in your life. You could put it to your marriage. Okay, what game are we playing in our marriage? It's more important to be peaceful than be right. Now, all of a sudden, you have a marriage where you don't have to fight.
Right. That's beautiful. And so you can apply that to any aspect of your life, business, relationships.
Yeah. I mean, if you just look at what I was talking about before, it's more important to have freedom than work harder. A lot of people are just like, it's more important to work hard than have free time.
Oh, I do not resonate with that at all.
Exactly. It's like, what? You know, but people do. Because they don't see it. It's a blind spot. Most people are just in games by default. So they're not by design. But when you are the designer of the games in your life, you can also design new games. You know, my husband and I look at this all the time. Okay, what are we up to this year? What is the game this year? Last year, the game was it's more important to create freedom than not, which we did. This year, we took on freedom and adventure.
Ooh,
you know,
tell me more about that.
Well, we ended up doing like 9 trips since we've been here since May. So it's like in 5 months, we've done 9 trips. See, this is one of them here to Amsterdam. But just last year, we didn't do that at all. We were just kind of like, nope, we're just going to be here and enjoy this and did it, whatever. But now we're like, okay, now we're in this game. So now we're going to take actions consistent with fulfilling on that game. It's not true that it's more important to have adventure,
right?
You know, but we created that as the game. So now we're playing that game.
Very cool. Love that. So Josselyne, when you work with people and particularly organizations and big corporations, right? There's a lot of different things going on. What are some of the challenges or the things that you've observed coaching companies?
Well, first of all, most companies don't have a vision. They have a mission. And a mission lives in the world of doing. Vision is more spatial, experiential. It's more being oriented, right? So the first thing I do is I work with the owners or the founders to get clear about what is their vision. Like, okay, this is the vehicle, this company, but what really are they out to provide for people, like the experience of what? If they had something to leave people as a legacy, what would they want them to have access to as an experience? So I work with them on the vision. But then when I work with their teams, one of the things that happens in companies is burnout is huge, right? And especially since COVID, but even before COVID, people get burnt out mostly because they're disconnected from their vision. They're just doing stuff. They're getting stuff done. They might be effective, but that's how burnout persists, is because they're not connected to what I would call a power source relationship, getting sourced by their vision. There's unlimited power, unlimited energy when you're connected to what really matters to you. So I do these vision workshops for the companies where the executives might share what the vision is for the company, but that's not necessarily your employee's vision,
right?
And so giving them the opportunity to get clear about what their vision is, what matters to them, when they're looking up and out, what do they want to fulfill on with their life, allows them to see more often than not that working inside the company's vision is aligned. They could actually envision themselves fulfilling their vision inside the company's vision. But sometimes that's not the case.
There's no synergy.
No synergy. And at that point, better that person leaves and goes to play another game. Basketball is not for everyone.
Right.
Some people, you should go play football. It's no problem.
Or tennis.
Or tennis, exactly. Or pickleball,
right.
apparently, But so it's really not a right or wrong thing. It's a synergistic thing. So it's like when you create synergy, you have far more power when there's discord.
And goals are able to be achieved faster when there is that collective alignment.
Totally, because then you're in the same game. It's like, if you're in the game of basketball and you got teammates and one of them's playing pickleball on the court, you're not going to have a very effective season.
Wow, that visual right there just really crystallized it for me.
And most people don't spend the time doing that. They don't care about what their employee's vision is.
And it's so important because it's
important.
like who you spend your time with. So it's really not only helpful from whatever a business and professional level, but also just even like a health level, I find.
Oh my God, And I have somebody that I coach that was like, well, but my employees, they're not going to get this vision thing. They're not going to understand what I'm talking about because I tell them to do the work. I don't have to do it. Let you ask people what their vision is. I give them enough training that they can ask the questions. And they were like, no, you don't understand. These people aren't. I go, listen, if they're a human being, they have a vision. You just haven't tapped into it yet. And most people die with their vision intact. They have not even identified it. So it's an opportunity to be the kind of person, if you're somebody in a company that has the opportunity to create this conversation, where people get connected to what really matters to them. They'll remember that the rest of their life, whether they work for you or work with you or not. That's a lasting impact.
Well said. So tell me some of the results that you've experienced working with individuals. Anything that you want to highlight or share with us?
Well, I think of the most recent one. I mean, there's so many over the years, that I could point to. But in the last, couple of years, the most recent ones, I mean, even in this program I'm doing with these entrepreneurs, I have somebody who 17x'd their business in the first 6 months.
Wow.
17x'd. I have somebody who 4x'd their business. I have somebody who reduced their stress by 80% and reduced their meetings by 50%. So they have 50% less meetings and 80% less stress.
That sounds like magic to me. Sign me up.
I know, really. I know. I have my eye on you for next year. But seriously, it's like the kind of results are kind of shocking, actually. I have somebody who wanted to, they had been doing about $1 million in business. They wanted to do $2 million. It was pie in the sky, never going to they're beyond 2 million, and it's only like 8 months into the program.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it's just because it's about performance, and most people aren't clear about what performance is. Performance is actions and inactions. If you do X, you're going to have Y result. If you don't do X, you'll have Z result. Including things like if you want to have a breakthrough in your vitality, and one of the things you're going to measure it by is your weight. Not eating cheesecake might help that,
Right. Not aligned with the goals.
Exactly. Right. So it's like being able to have somebody who's like scaffolding for you. That's what a coach really is. It's like scaffolding to have your performance be clear and then get clear about what is the source of the results you're producing. Because most people don't know. They're just like, we just had a good month.
It's like, reactionary. All right, let's talk about creating with words, because I know that is one of the fundamental principles that I learned in the workshop with you. And I was so out of integrity. I didn't even know how out of integrity I was.
Most people don't because
I had no
they
idea.
justify it.
Right. And so my life was very much like, hey, let's go out for a coffee. And then it would never happen, or just life would happen. And now I live very differently from that. So let's talk about creating with words.
Well, when I talk about being in the world of creation versus the world of reaction, there's words in both worlds, right? When you react, you have words too, right?
Of course. Oh, yeah.
But those words are mostly a description of your thoughts, or a description of your feelings, or a description of a person or a situation. In the world of creation, you use your words to create life, which creates your experience, your moods, your thoughts. So when you create a vision, that's created in the mode of word, right? So if you say, my vision is freedom, I'm just going to use that as an example, that only exists in word. It's not like it's like this cup. It doesn't exist in reality, in physical reality. It exists only in language. So when you give your word to meet somebody for coffee or to go to the gym, give your word to yourself. Most people are pretty good at word to other people, but not good at words to themselves. It's the same paintbrush. So if you don't have power with let's do coffee at 10 a.m., how are you going to have power with doubling my business or creating freedom? It's nonsensical to think that muscle is going to be available to you if you aren't strengthening it with everything you do or say. So when somebody gives their word to something, I always say it takes so much to get this, so if anybody could just get one thing from this conversation, this would be the most valuable thing they could get. It's not what you give your word to. It's the word. If you develop the muscle of your word, then you can give your word to anything and have it happen, from wouldn't it be great to have a dog, to, double my business, to intimacy in my marriage, to whatever it is you're creating, you will have power with your word. And it isn't like anything is small. It's not like, well, I just said I'd take out the garbage. I mean, who cares if I do it or not? Yeah, that's all the justifications that we use to explain why we don't keep our word. Yet we don't have the muscle. So it's like if everything you give your word to is like a sit-up,
Right.
It's not about what you're giving your word to. It's the word itself is the sit-up. If you want abs of steel, start saying X and doing X, period.
That's it.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable.
No, well, yeah. I mean, there's obviously situations where you have an emergency or whatever.
Sure.
Or you can revoke your word, or you can make a new word, but there's an impact. Like, I say, or if you said, oh, let's do this podcast and come to Amsterdam, and now I'm on the train, you're like, oh, by the way, we can't do it. I mean, there's a bigger impact on me then than if you tell me before I book my train ticket, right?
Of course.
Or I say, I'm going to do this, and you build a whole event around it, and then I'm like, sorry, I'm not going to, But you can always honor your word. You can't always keep your word, but you can always honor your word by getting in communication with whoever you gave your word to, who breaking it is going to be impacting them, and dealing with the impact as a person of your word, including sometimes it might cost you some money. It's like, I know I said I would, be there for dinner, and you bought the roast and you cooked it, and I'm not there. So let me, send you a gift certificate to the whatever. I don't know, I'm making that up now, but
No, I totally hear what you're saying, especially from a production standpoint. I mean, the whole industry is built on integrity and keeping your word. That's how it's built.
Yeah.
And without that, the foundation just falls.
Yeah.
So,
and if you have a schedule and a budget, and then you don't honor that, good luck getting hired.
Right.
Again. Yeah. As a freelancer or as a production company, I mean, forget it.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
people will relate to you as solid if your word is solid. That's really when people go, oh, they're solid. That's what they mean, is that their word is solid. You can count on what they say. They will deliver what they say.
Right. And so in living a life of integrity, is it solely based on your word, would you say?
I would say your word and your actions, because if I say, you can count on me to be loving with you, and then I punch you in the face, obviously my actions are not lining up to my word. So it's walking the talk. Yeah. So it's you say X, and then you take the actions to fulfill X. That's what I mean by the world of creation and vision. So if you have a vision and then you have goals within that vision, I'll just keep saying, tripling your business, whatever it is, then you take the actions that will fulfill on that goal, right? That's operating with integrity with your word. If you create a game of tripling your business, and then all of a sudden you get scared. That's the world of reaction, right?
Yeah.
What if I can't do it? Doubtful thoughts, imposter syndrome, blah, 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 all that stuff. Now you're not honoring your word, you're honoring your thoughts and feelings, which you have no say over. They just happen. It's like brain farts, they just happen. If you could control your feelings, you wouldn't feel half the ways you do.
How does one control their feelings?
You can't.
Though?
It's irrelevant. I don't have to feel like going to the gym for my abs to respond to the sit-ups. Your feelings, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong. I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth, because obviously if you feel like your life is being threatened and you're in a situation, you should get out, of that situation. But in most cases, your feelings are not useful for you. What I do with my feelings is I feel them. I know that sounds very obvious, but I just feel them and then they kind of pass. But if I fixate on them and get in bed with them and start talking about them and processing them, I end up in that world of reaction, like stuck, like in mud, rather than, okay, but what's my vision? And what did I say I was going to do? And now what am I going to do? I never feel like going to yoga. Ever, ever, ever. Not once have I woken up at 6:45 in the morning and said, oh, I feel like going to hot yoga, ever. But if I say I'm going to do it.
And it's in your calendar, you're there.
And if I told my husband, forget it, then it's even more real. It's like I might be able to sneak away with it if I haven't told anybody. And I don't book the class until the last minute when I'm trying to play games with myself. But ultimately, your feelings are mostly not your friend.
Yeah. Wow. It's hard to hear, but it's so true, because I also feel like working in the creative industry, there is a lot of feeling involved. So it is a balance between the intuition and also the logical and practical side of living.
Intuition is great as long as you don't rely on it to tell you what's real, because your intuition is not a reliable test for reality. And neither are your feelings, because there's plenty of times you felt things that turned out not to be accurate.
Absolutely.
You felt like you could trust that person and then they, screwed you on a deal or whatever. So it's not a problem to have feelings or intuition or thoughts or anything. You just have to realize that they're not accurate as a test. Now, what the game would be in being unmessable with is to have your word be an accurate test for reality.
Give me an example of that.
So that if I say to you, I'll be there at 7, you don't have to ever, that's a done deal.
That's it.
So if I say to you, I'm going to double my business this year, you're not wondering, well, we'll see. You're like, well, that's going to happen, because that's who that person is. They say things and that happens. That's called magic, like abracadabra, which is one of our favorite words. And it literally means in ancient Aramaic and Hebrew, I create as I speak. I create as I speak.
Wow. And you have that tattoo.
I do. So do my 2 daughters.
So cool. Abracadabra. It's a word that you grow up hearing, or I grew up.
Yeah.
Abracadabra, so fun, so cute, so fun to say.
And then a hat out of, the rabbit in the hat.
And powerful meaning.
So if you want to be a magic person.
Yes, I think we all do.
You have to have your word be reliable. So that's why everything matters. So if you say you're going to take the garbage out at 7, do it at 7. Don't do it at 7:05 and justify why you didn't do it. Or if you say you're going to do it at 7 and you tell your husband, I'm going to do it at 7, and then you see you're not going to be home in time to do or whatever, get in communication immediately. Say, I know I said 7, but I'm remaking that word to 7:30.
It's been a game changer. I have done my best, I can say. I think I should also ask Richie to live my life in this way. I think to a point where I drive him a little crazy, because I'm like, wait, did we say, I said that I was going to do this though? It becomes almost like an obsession.
It's a good obsession. It's kind of like if you're an alcoholic and you're obsessed with not having alcohol, you make sure there isn't alcohol in the sauce when you go for somebody's pasta, right?
Of course.
So it's kind of a smart obsession, except when it becomes a prison. That's when you end up in the world of reaction in your own word.
Where it controls you versus having the freedom
being
with
the
it.
author.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Such an important distinction there.
And that's why you have to revisit this stuff all the time. I revisit it almost every day. I hate to say it because it seems overwhelming. It's not overwhelming at all, but it's like I look with my husband almost every day, either in the morning or at night. I was like, okay, so let's just look, let's take a step back. What am I creating here? Because I had an opportunity to do this thing in 2025 that was going to be a lot of money. So it seemed like a really good idea to do, right? Yeah. But it was also a lot of hours. And I just redesigned my life from, when I used to work at Landmark, working like 70 hours a week,
right,
to working 13 hours a week.
Wow.
So
what a difference.
I mean, yeah. And that's why I want to train people to do that. And it was starting to, increase. And I had this thought, I'll just suffer through it for a year so I can bank the money. Mm-hmm. And then I'll, go back to freedom.
Right.
It's like, and then I heard myself talking. I was like, what am I talking about? I'm going to suffer through it? Right. Like, I'm going to spend a year suffering through something? That is absurd. So I had to literally take it out of I was like, nope, not going to be doing that. And have to readjust. So you have to recalibrate and look at, okay, what am I creating? And is what I am acting on
in alignment?
Exactly.
Because what is the most important thing, like for you? Freedom?
Family, number one. Freedom. Magic. Yeah. Empowering people. Those are like the most important things to me. Because my whole life is designed to empower people to live their dreams. I mean, there's not almost anything I do that isn't designed to develop people to be unmessable with and live their dreams, not chase them.
Live them
like you're doing here,
Yeah. Thank you for that. And so let me get this straight. You wake up every day with your husband and you ask the question, what are we creating today?
When we wake up, I'm creating, how do I get out of yoga? But no. But when we're having coffee and then we're going over the calendar for the day, okay, what do we have going on today? Because now when we're in France, he cooks for me, which is really nice.
Oh, that's nice.
So he's creating the menu is what he's creating in the morning. But we'll look and say, okay, so what do we need to fulfill on that we've designed? And what are we going to now either tweak in terms of what we're designing or maybe get rid of? Like, this doesn't have to be our goal. We could actually pivot. And I was going to do an event in New York in January. And, I designed all these sales emails and all this whole thing. And then I was like, I don't really want to do this event. Like, why am I designing this? Just because I did it last year? Like, so I don't have to do this event. Yeah. I was just doing it because it was like, oh, that's on the calendar. I'm going to do that. No, wait a minute. It's my calendar. Let me look. What am I creating? Is this fulfilling on what I'm creating? And we pivoted and it was like space. And now I'm free to create all sorts of other stuff. And something then fell into my space because there was space to work with this company. It's very exciting for me to design curriculum. So I'm getting to do that because I had the space to do it.
Wow, that's fantastic. And so in line with what you're saying, do you believe that everyone is a creator?
They can be, but it's an underdeveloped muscle. When you were little,
yes,
weren't you a creator? I mean,
I was obsessed.
Exactly. Everybody is like, oh, I'm a ballerina. Oh, I'm a fireman. Oh, I'm, this is my new best friend. You meet them for 2 seconds. You're constantly creating. But then somewhere we kind of atrophy that muscle a little bit. Even people who are in creative fields, they create in that area, but not all areas
of their life.
So that's why they love painting or, skiing or whatever it is, because that's their zone area. But what if you could have your whole life be the zone? That's the real juice.
That's the play. And that's what I'm after. And I hope everyone listening is too. It's very inspiring. So Josselyne, you recently moved to Paris. Were you afraid to move to Paris? What was that process like for you?
Well, first I was super excited. And then I remember a few months into the planning of it. And to be clear, we don't live there full time. We're still in the States with my parents and my kids, half the year at least. But I remember it was a couple months into we were getting the visas and we were getting the and I called Michael and I said, maybe it's too soon. Maybe we should wait a year to do this. I don't know if it's a good idea for you to take 6 months off of work. I started to get nervous, about how are we going to make money and how are we going to live and how are we going to, all the stuff that goes on in your brain.
Totally.
And he said, thank God. He said, no, we should do it. And I was like, okay, because sometimes you just need someone to be the anchor, the stand, for something when you're swaying around. Yeah. And that's the power of a community. That's what's really important, especially in a company or anything. A group of people that are up to the same game can keep you on track when you start to falter, because everybody has messable with moments. It doesn't matter.
Totally. And
so that's important.
Definitely can relate to this, especially most recently where we were talking about expanding our studio, which we are. We're doing a small expansion, which we're very excited about. But, from the practical side, it's very scary. I'm like, oh my gosh, should we do it? Should we not? And what does this symbolize? And after so much back and forth, we're gonna move forward with it and just make it work. Yeah. We're gonna make it work, right? Just like this move here to Amsterdam, which at the time completely seemed illogical, but also right at the same time. And here we are, five plus years later.
Crazy. And it's not like you're stuck here.
No.
I mean, you can go, at any moment you could change your mind. It's not like, people get nervous because they think they're going to be stuck, but everything's etched in sand, not in stone. I mean, there's not much. I mean, other than surgical procedures. Okay, fine. But, even those these days you can reverse. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Why that came to mind. But I was thinking about a vasectomy. I thought, I mean, that might be etched in stone. But no, they can reverse those things now.
Things can change. And I always thought I was going to be living in New York City forever.
Me too.
And even though I know I'm still very much part of the city and whatnot, I still feel very much connected living here and there. And I just feel like my world has expanded. And it's just nice to be in both and be fluid in that way. So
yeah, it's not either or. I like how you said it. You expanded your world. You didn't migrate your world. You expanded it.
Right. And just the amount of people and the opportunities that we've experienced because we've managed to live on the other side of that fear. And I feel like there is inevitable fear, doubts. What if this is a bad idea? What if? But honestly, when you're pulled in a direction, I think it's really important to honor and explore why that is. Like, what is happening in that process? And as long as you're not really running away from something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that thing
that would be a reaction. If you create something and then it's giving you your actions. I mean, in those moments of doubt, what I would say, because this is not just about moving someplace, but, I work with people who have doubts about, opening up a division in their company or getting divorced or whatever it is. It's like, okay, what's your vision? Now, what's the action that will fulfill on that? You don't have to worry about the vehicle if you have your eye on the vision and you're taking actions consistent with that. Because if it's not consistent with your vision, moving or opening up the division or getting divorced or whatever, then rethink it. But what are you truing it up to? Is thoughts and fears? No. True it up to your vision.
One of the things that I hear a lot on your podcast, which by the way, I highly recommend Josselyne's podcast, Be Unmessable With.
That's it.
It's fantastic.
It's everything. Be unmessable with. It's everywhere.
It's your brand. One of the things I recently heard on that podcast was it's not about the how, it's about the who.
Oh yeah. That's actually a great book. I can't remember the name of the person who wrote it, but I have so many people going, but I don't know how to do that, or I don't know how to sell my company, or I don't know how to, train people to do what I do. You don't have to know how, ever. All you have to ask is, who do I know, or who do I know that knows somebody who does know how? Because you are no more than 3 people away from every dream you've ever had. I don't care what dream it is. I remember when I first started raising money, because I've raised close to $90 million for charities since I was a teenager. And I remember I took on this game of raising $100,000 for the New York Youth at Risk program. And I was like, how am I going to do this? I can't even ask my father for $10. I mean, I was like, I had such money stuff going on. And thank God I took on that game because it broke me through. And I remember saying, okay, well, I'm going to find 3 people that have raised money. I'm going to interview them and find out. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to figure this out. It's already been done. And people have done it effectively. So just get the roadmap.
Find the formula.
Exactly.
Wow, that's powerful. And so when we apply it to our industry, especially, it just seems like so much is changing, especially with AI. And then there's like all of this talk about what's happening in our industry.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of angst, I guess, around that. But we recently hosted an event and one of those panelists said something really interesting about diving deeper into your story and to your humanity and also building with your community and creating from there and having AI be part of that, a tool for it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to replace, it's not all or nothing.
Your humanity, there's never been a better time to be human because it's a commodity. With all the digital and artificial, and your humanity becomes like your special sauce.
Absolutely.
So to speak. But I remember when I first started being a producer, I started in animation, and then I went and interviewed for this job at this interactive cable station. I was like 19 years old. And this guy's like asking me questions. Well, have you ever produced a television show? I said, no, I've produced commercials.
Right.
I've never produced a television show, but it's a longer commercial. I could do it. And so he hired me, right? And then I had never produced live action. I knew nothing, right? And I'm sitting there in this job, and it's my job to produce like 12 television series.
Oh my goodness.
And so I immediately got on the phone. Who do I know? Who do I know that knows how to do this? And I just started,
talking and learning
and learning. But it's like anything like that. You want to start a company. I don't know how. You want to start a nonprofit, but I don't know how. Okay, well, go.
Yeah.
Ask. And people love to support people. It's like, don't you love to, if somebody said to you, how do I do a podcast? Wouldn't you be the first one? Oh my God, let me save you so much.
Oh yeah, I love sharing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
let me save you a year's worth of mistakes right now.
Well, not that we've mastered it yet, but
but still, it's like, and I think people in the production community are like that. It's like they want to support each other. I don't think it's yes, there's competition, especially if you're a freelancer and you don't know where your next gig is coming from. And my husband's in production too, so I get it. But at the same time, you're stronger as a community, and
Absolutely.
as a community of human beings, anything is possible.
Absolutely. So Josselyne, tell me, what is next for you?
Well, this year I'm very excited because I'm launching a new program. I have the Mastery program that I told you about, but now I have the people that were in Mastery last year. I'm creating a new program that's all about vision, fulfillment, and ease. So I'm launching that in February. And, people can find me at my website. They can find me on the podcast. They can find me on Instagram, Be Unmessable With. But the website is beunmessablewith.com. And I have a lot of freebies on that page where you can actually just get a free workshop or a worksheet or a process that I've designed for people to start to build the muscle of being unmessable with. So you can go see what appeals to you. There's one on money. There's one on burnout. There's one on imposter syndrome, all kinds of stuff.
That's fantastic. And do you look for specific qualities in people that you want to coach or businesses? And can you tell me about that?
Well, I don't have a lot of space for one-on-one clients anymore. I've been trying to limit that. That's why I have these, higher level groups. I have a regular level group, and then I have the entrepreneur group. And it's all by interview. So I have to really get that the person is committed to at least doubling their business and having freedom. Because if they're not committed to that, the coaching's going to be inapplicable. It's like, trying to coach somebody in running a marathon, but they want to run a 5K. Your coaching is going to occur like annoying if you're not in the game that you're being coached in. And the group is in that game. So it's important for everybody to be in the basketball game.
Right. Because then there's the synergy that's created.
Yes, exactly.
Right, very cool. Josselyne, what does it mean to be unmessable with?
Well, it doesn't mean being tough or not feeling your feelings. A lot of people hear that word and they think you can't mess with me. But that's not really what it is. It's about ultimately having your word be unmessable with, so that when you create your vision, your dream, you're acting on fulfilling that and not getting stopped by reacting to whatever's coming at you, which is where most people spend 90% of their day.
Wow. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Let's say you're coaching someone who is a dreamer, who dreams big, but maybe the practical side of things isn't great. What advice would you have for them? And then what advice would you have for the person who's practical and doesn't dream big?
Well, let me take the first one. So if somebody is like a big dreamer and they have big goals that are unrealistic, which is a tough word because there's, everything is accomplishable if you have the right people working on it, right? I would have them get related to reality. So when people say, I want to have $10 million in 5 years, I said, great, how much do you have now? And a lot of people don't know how much money they have. So we get related to the reality of their money. Okay, they have this much. Great. Now, how much are your expenses? What's your income? Now, what do we need to create? If we're going to create 10 million by 5 years from now, what would have to be there for you? So I do the practical planning with them so that it's tethered in reality, not a fantasy. Like, I'm going to be an astronaut in 5 years. I'm just like, okay, no, you're not, most likely. I mean, unless you are. Right. But the point is, if you can plan it, you can execute it, if you keep your word with the planning. So that's the beauty of it. This thing is foolproof. It's unbelievable because if you can actually have a vision and then have a goal within that vision and then backwards plan the goal being accomplished down to the nanosecond in your calendar, and you just do what you created, flow.
Flow.
ease. It's just there.
words.
It's when you don't take, and it takes time and focus to do that, and people resist it. But when you don't do that, then you're scrambling and reacting.
Wow.
Now, with the other person that's focused on the details, and I would have them get out of the poopy fishbowl and see what their vision is so that they have a context for what they're doing rather than just getting stuff done. Because if you get into get stuff done
That's
mode,
reactionary.
exactly.
And it's so easy to fall into that.
Totally. It's muscle memory. This is like
It's
this,
cruise control.
It is. Cruise control is a good way of saying it. I always say there's like a fork in the road, right? You have the world of being messable with and the world of being unmessable with. The world of being messable with is like the paved road with like lots of gas stations and fast food and like, there's no resistance to go. The road of being unmessable with has like trees and boulders and,
storms.
Exactly. You have to carve that path. Yeah. And it takes far more discipline, which people hate that word. I love it. But discipline, design, deliberate, intention, Yeah.
Wow. Clear.
But it's developable like any muscle. It's like you have an atrophied muscle and then you have this like overcompensating muscle to go down that other road. So you got to put the hazard sign up and don't go down that road. Right. So I train people to identify when they're going down that road, hack it, get to neutral, and shift gears.
Powerful. Love that. One of the things that we learned in the workshop that we did at Landmark that I still apply to my life today.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. It's so, the tools that I received were just phenomenal.
Me too. It's I designed my whole life, It's
really
like incredibly valuable.
And one of my favorite things, just to share it with the audience, is there's a circle of all the information you could possibly ever know, right, about the universe, right? Can you tell us that?
Sure. That's actually Johari's window. It is adapted from Johari's window, which is anciently old, not a Landmark thing. But there's a circle. It's all the knowledge that is possibly known. And then there's a section of that, like a pizza slice, right? Because I'm from New York, so a pizza slice of what you know. And you know things, like what's an example of something you know?
Yeah, I know that, my parents were born in Italy and, I grew up in New York and New Jersey, et cetera. Yeah.
And you know how to set up a camera and you know how to produce an event. Right, exactly. Now, then there's a slice of the pizza that is what you don't know. So give me an example of something you don't know.
I don't know how to get to the moon. I know it's possible to get to the moon, but I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, but you don't know that. It's not like unknown to you. So if you really wanted to get to the moon or to learn how to get to the moon, you could find out. And you could take a class or read a book or watch a show, whatever, and move pieces of what you don't know into what you know. But both those slices are in what you know. That's what people don't realize. It's like, no, it's what you know,
and what you know
you don't know. Exactly. And if you want to learn it, you can learn it. But the rest of the pie, which is most of the pie, 70% of the pie, is what you don't know you don't know. And that's where blind spots exist. That's those kind of aha moments that alter life forever when you see something that you had never seen. You weren't even looking for it. And all of a sudden, the seeing of that thing unleashes a new action, a new world.
A new possibility.
A new possibility.
So it's a breakthrough.
It is. That's
and how long does it take to find that? And can it be done in an instant?
It is done in an instant. I mean, it's like those horses in Central Park that used to have the blinders on. They can't see to the sides of them. They can only see what's right in front of them. You take off a blinder, in an instant, they have a whole other access to, a whole other street to go down, a whole other, park to explore. It's the same thing with people in their lives. That blinder of you can't do your art as your career, that was a decision I had made when I was 5. I mean, in the infinite wisdom of 5, but then I made it the truth and it became a blinder. And the minute it went down, I was like, oh my gosh, look at all these actions I could take. And I know so many people in the record business and I could, ask them for this and I could do this and I could do, and all of a sudden there's flow where it had been backed up, so to speak.
Wow. And it was just really about being conscious of what you didn't know that you didn't know.
And that's where people get stuck. Whenever you're experiencing being stuck, likely there's a blind spot at play. And when you eliminate a blind spot, and it's not like it can disappear, but you just eliminate it as the truth. So whatever it was that you knew was the truth isn't.
Right. It's
you eliminate a constraint.
Right.
And what you don't know is made up of like what you believe to be true, but you don't know that it isn't. what you're sure is real, but it isn't. All these things that you don't ever question.
Right. Wow. It just takes time to like sit and really be with all of that. But I think doing the courses, having coaches really helps illuminate these blind spots, which are instrumental to living an extraordinary life. And what does it mean to live an extraordinary life?
Well, I think people, again, it's like kind of like what's success to you. For some people, success is having a happy, healthy family. For some people, success is, having enough money in the bank to not have to worry about their rent. For some people, it's having, 100 times that so that they can do whatever they're committed to doing or start this company or that. So I think that's a very personal question about success. However, success and fulfillment are two different things. So fulfillment comes, true fulfillment, not like the feeling that's flighty. True fulfillment comes from creation and then fulfillment of that creation. Success is like succeeding at measures. You succeed at a target or a goal or a metric that you've set up for your life, for your company, for your whatever. But success doesn't equal fulfillment. And anybody that if you ask them something they succeeded at, are they truly fulfilled? Most of the time, it's like maybe for a minute. But fulfillment is a different world. And I think people look for those two things in the same world. And that's why they chase it rather than experience it.
And it's really important to create a distinction there and also define success for yourself, right? Because it is personal.
It is. I mean, that's the first thing I do with people. Okay, so tell me, if they sign on to work with me for a year, I'll say, okay, so by the end of this year, what do you want to accomplish? What will be a successful year for you? Mm-hmm. Because I don't know what game they're playing until they tell me.
Right.
Then I can coach them in that game. Or if I can't, I won't, work with them. But it's like if somebody says, I want to get sober, I'll say, you should go to AA. Don't come to me. Go to AA.
Right.
Get sober. They're good at that. They really know, they've mastered the art of getting sober. Yes. You know what I mean? But if I'm working with somebody and then all of a sudden it comes out that they have some sort of substance thing, I'll get a parallel pathway called 12-step to come into the picture so that I can work along with the 12-step program to support them. Because sobriety, I don't know why this even came up in my head, but is mostly word. You give your word not to drink that day.
Right.
I didn't give my word because I am not in that game, but but my husband is. Yeah. And 34 years he's given his word not to drink every day, every day. And one day of not honoring your word or lack of integrity, as you would say, and the whole house crumbles.
Yeah.
But I think being extraordinary isn't about having some innate quality because, we're all ordinary, but having an extraordinary vision or an extraordinary game that you're playing and that you're honoring your actions inside of that vision, that's an extraordinary life. Gandhi was a very ordinary guy, so was Martin Luther King, but they had an extraordinary vision that they gave their life to. That they gave their word to, I could cry, that they gave their word to and then they gave their life to. And that is extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. That's lovely. Such an inspiring conversation today. Thank you so much for your time, for being here with us.
My pleasure.
It's been so fulfilling talking to you and so illuminating in a lot of ways. And I hope that anyone listening gets a lot of value from this episode as well.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to do this in person. I've never done a podcast in person.
Well, welcome. Hopefully it's the first of many.
I am no longer an in-person podcast virgin.
Okay. There we go. Happy to be the first.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.